Did you know the top 10 mobile games in the US grossed more than $340 million in June? Do you want your game to earn more? AppFigures is all about giving game makers the tools they need to get more downloads and revenue. You may already know them for analytics and app store optimization. Now, AppFigures can help you keep track of competitors and the game market. From how many downloads they're getting and how much money they're making to their audience demographics and even which tools they use to power their games. Their competitor intelligence gives you great context. Got a great idea for an app or a game? With AppFigures, you can figure out how big the market is and how much money you could be making with it. Say a competitor adds a new feature or was mentioned in the news. With AppFigures, you can see if that brought in more downloads, and that's just scratching the surface. Whether you're growing your game or building a new one, AppFigures has what you need to reduce risk and get more downloads. Best of all, you don't need a large budget or data science degree to do this kind of thing anymore. AppFigures has made it affordable and simple. On top of tools, AppFigures also provides a lot of guides and tutorials to take you step by step through gaining more visibility with ASO and increasing your revenue by learning from your competitors. They just released a free guide on that actually. Head to appfigures.com/on/GameDevUnchained to try AppFigures for free. Again, that's AppFigures, appfigures.com/on/GameDevUnchained to try it for free. If you like it, use our special code GDU3030 to get 30% off for the next 3 months. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Game Dev Unchained, the #1 game development podcast about game development and the lifestyle thereof. I am your host, Brandon Pham. As always, we're bringing you the greatest and latest news about game developers and talking to game developers around the world about what those news mean to us. So it's no surprise, it's been quite a while for your loyal listeners out there. I was kind of absent, unannounced. In truth, a lot of it was kind of burnt out and needed a break. And with the time given, I had a lot of time to reflect on where I want the podcast to go. But also, it gave me a lot of concentration to kind of grow my studio that I've been forming for 4 to 5 years now. And I needed that time to kind of concentrate on that. But also, I realized there was a lot of things that was happening since basically November of 2021 that, the industry did not sleep. It kept on going and a lot of things have been happening. And so I want to dedicate the next 5 days to kind of get myself back on the wagon, to get into the rhythm of podcasting again and bring you guys everything that you deserved, that you didn't get in the closing year, but catch you guys up to what's going on in the industry. So to kind of kick off this year with a bang, but also recap what last year worth of episodes, I wanted to kind of start this off with starting today and for the rest of the week, kind of like a revisit about all the episodes on various different topics last year and bring to you guys and in that way usher in the new episodes that are coming this year. So without further ado, the first episode was recorded early in the year of 2021. As a reminder, we kind of came out of the pandemic and with 2021 starting to get people back into the workplace, but not really knowing what that persisted. And a lot of that was a lot of developers that I've had on the podcast asking about how they reacted to coming back and reacted to how the respective countries reacted to the pandemic. So obviously what we knew about the pandemic and the virus itself last year to what we know now is a lot different. So Dave Mervick, we had him on a few times, and he's a senior narrative designer for Little Nightmares. And at that point, Little Nightmares 2 was coming out. But we dedicated the whole episode to basically talking about what was going on, and how that affected our game dev lives. This is from episode 255, Getting Creative After a World-Changing Event with Dave Mervick. Enjoy. But I hope everything's okay. I just kind of caught the last something about your dad.
Yeah. I was just saying, like, when my dad was out in West Africa, when Ebola hit.
Oh, I see.
But it's like, it was only because I had like a personal connection to someone out there that I was like really kind of struck by that, and he had to get out very quick. But like, it was the same, like you were saying, you know, oh, this is over in China, and like, it makes you feel like really ashamed of like your reaction to that. It's like, how many people are affected by that out there? But it only counts when it comes over here. Do you know what I mean? And like, oh, now we take it seriously. Now we have to, well, in the case of the US and the UK, do nothing until it's like absolutely out of control. But you know, it's just you're just like that. Why didn't we take it seriously? Why didn't anyone take it seriously when you have a shot at keeping it under control? But you always think in these, like, even though it's like a whole continent, it's still so parochial, you know, and like closed off. I'm like, well, it's fine unless it comes here, but now it's too late. I've seen Outbreak, you know. Dustin Hoffman was on top of it, but no one else was.
It's funny that you're bringing that up. No, I've seen that movie, but I would say that there's something to that. I think one of the things that researchers are kind of coming out of this, a lot of the we country that's like socialist type of countries are handling this a bit better. The we kind of first type of mentality, and then the I countries such as ours are really struggling with this, and not even about things happening over the fence in other countries and continents, but like I see it within my neighborhood. Like, well, it's you know, this so and so who lives down the street, they got it, but it's not our little bubble, so we don't. And it's like all the way to the last minute of just pushing, you know, the thinking
keep
around
pulling
this.
the next ladder up, don't you?
Really.
Right now it's you lot. I'm fine still, Lou.
Yeah, and I'm still seeing that. It's like even when my sister-in-law's boyfriend got it, and he works as a EMT at a hospital, so of course he got it, right? But then luckily he didn't spread it within our bubble. And then the next, you know, it's very weird. You see these internal struggles with family. Like my immediate family is very closed off. Like, we're treating this very seriously. And then our other parts of our family are just hanging out every week in these family gatherings, which is the number one spreader, funny enough. But then that circle just got back together as soon as he kicked it. I was like, guys, that was a close call. That was a real thing there. That could have killed the whole family there, right there. But everyone just, I don't know, maybe the struggle is real. And I think I do understand and sympathize. It's like a year in, maybe almost now. And if we had taken control like New Zealand, people would have just
tell me about it.
Hunkered down 6 weeks and just moved on with their life. But no, we're dragging this on because of our stubbornness, I think.
And it's like, I think both the US and the UK had the worst people in charge at the worst possible time. I mean, you know, we could have, like someone said recently, like the UK could have had a situation like New Zealand if they hadn't destroyed that guy, and instead they got the worst government in the world who've done so much to damage the chances of people getting through this. You know, it's ridiculous. And my sister got it as well. She works for the NHS, I was more angry than she was at the token gesture that came every Thursday, where people would go outside and clap for health workers for a minute. I found that insulting.
Yeah.
But this isn't that podcast, is it? But I am. Do you know what I mean? It's just
no. I think it's
selling the NHS out from under people, telling them they're not absolutely unprepared for something like this because they live on the edge all the time because there's no profit in looking after people. But we will give you a round of applause every week. Oh well, thanks for that, man. But never, you know.
I mean, obviously, this affects everybody, right? I know we're a game development podcast, but like, look at how we're I think there's a mental toll. Even with me, I was working from home before, and kind of want to dig into if you had a history of working from home before, maybe a few days here and there. But even this was like very taxing. This is because I'm used to like working at home and then taking a break and hang out in the weekends and then come back. This is like in prison, man. It's like I'm constantly locked to work. It's like, what else are you gonna do but not be productive? You're gonna, you gotta have things to do, and we're just finding things to do. And it's very, I think as a creative, there's a limit to that where you can be really creative, but then I'm at that point where I'm like, I need to get the fuck out and do something because I'm just sourcing from the same garbage. I'm recycling from my filth to try to come up with something creative. But I as a narrative designer, what are your struggles through this? Like, how is it hampering your creativity, your inspiration?
I think probably, mate. I mean, I've always worked from home a bit, like because I can. So because I live out like an hour outside of town now, so like sometimes it was just better. I've got no one to meet, so it's better I just stay at home and read and work and all that sort of stuff. But now it's this thing of like, no, you can't go in. And as soon as someone says you have to do the thing that you are doing, then you suddenly don't want to do that. You feel, So, and for me, like, it's this sort of, when I need to see people, I need to be able to go and see people because I really, I feed off that. Like, we've got such a great group of people at Tarsha as well. Like, I genuinely, I imagine everyone says this, it's like a family. Even if they're not American, they have an American accent in my head. Yeah. But like, it's just a great group of people, and I look forward to seeing them when I get in. And like, suddenly, when you don't get that, you don't get the energy to, when you walk away, to sit down and work. You don't have that anymore. It's just like, I'm at home. I'll take the dog out, I guess, and maybe have a coffee. And then I don't know. I mean, at the minute, the phase I'm in now is like I said, it's lots of research and writing and trying out of ideas. So it's kind of fine. It's what I'd be doing anyway, But the hard thing, and I think for all of us, we all miss, because we don't have breakfast together every Friday morning. It's just a lovely thing that get some music on, just sit at a table and bullshit with people. Usually abuse the guy who thinks every Marvel movie's great, or whatever. He knows who he is.
Yeah. So, you like the last part of Black Panther? Really? You really like that last fighting scene? You don't think it was overblown? CG fest?
I've actually stopped now. It's the same as Star Wars. I just stopped. I ran out of fake smiles. There comes a time in everyone's life when you've got no more fake smiles to give.
Yeah. But you're talking about stuff that, we've had a lot of people on and kind of speaking to the same struggles. It's like these Zoom meetings can go only so far. Like, you can't really feed off each other, and then they become like work. They feel like work. Now you have to schedule it to kind of just brainstorm, and it's not spontaneous anymore. And that's not how these kind of creative sessions, you want to go at it, but this is what we got. Are you finding a certain rhythm now? What benefits are you seeing from this? What cons do you think it's just irreplaceable until you guys can get back in the office? Like, what kind of discussions are you having internally and with your team of what's working with this and what's definitely not working? As soon as this is over, we got to do some type of hybrid approach.
I mean, everything's working, but that's how it is. It's like nothing's better than it was before.
Yeah,
but we're making it work, and I think that's the difference now. Is in the very beginning, it was just like a struggle, to get group discussions at all functional, because it can be awkward anyway, particularly if you're in like brainstorming or feedback or something. No one quite knows when to jump in, even if you're in the same room together. But when you've just got to have like this digital hand. Or like keep your poker face while someone's saying something that you absolutely disagree with. something
that's
which
true.
I abjectly fail at every time. I watch my own face going, "You suck at this so bad." Like, switch to profile picture mode.
Yeah.
But it's things like that where you need the energy of the room, and you vibe off people. You know, you can see if someone's enjoying what you're saying or if they're not enjoying what you're saying. And now all you have is what you see on the video, and you don't know what. Maybe they're checking their emails. You just don't know sometimes, like, because everyone's got to juggle so much. Maybe they have to quickly check something, or someone's bothering them, or maybe their kid just comes in and you're like, oh, well, that moment's gone. And that happens to me all. It's, you know, my lad will run in and just wants to sit with me and play with PS4 controller. I'm like, sorry, I am listening, but I have this also. So, you know, we make it all work now, but nothing's better. We had a lovely thing today, actually. Like, a lovely colleague of ours is moving on, and she was having like an exit interview, and our HR manager kind of arranged a surprise goodbye for her. So we all jumped in at the end of this exit interview.
Oh, nice.
And said "tra" and all this, and that's Northern for goodbye. By the way, I just realised I forget myself sometimes. So you kind of have to be a bit more creative, but it all kind of feels patchwork, doesn't it? You know, like nobody would enjoy a digital surprise party normally, but like, all right, is this the best we get? Then we'll take it. You know, it feels better than nothing. So, but
I think if anything, what I'm finding with developers is that we're since we're home a lot, I am seeing, you know, when I started this whole thing, my kids more. I'm able to kind of remind myself to take more breaks, you know, and enjoy, you know, what we're working towards this whole time is to enjoy family life and time at home as best as can. Because we really think about it, you know, 8 hours away from home or 10 hours plus, depending on your commute, every day, 5 days a week. I mean, that's at some point, I was joking, especially when we were finishing a project, I was seeing my cubicle buddy more than my wife. For months on end, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there was always something like that for game developers that we felt kind of locked to our table. And I think I love the fact that dynamic has changed. And I think the poor part of it is that it's kind of thrown into this extreme situation of where parents and teachers now, and now they're always at home as well, and it's like, all right, I need some break from people to concentrate, and it's hard to balance. It's not something that we should be getting used to, but temporarily we have to.
I think where we are now, like, because a lot of people had like been interested in, you know, like for example, like flexible working hours, and you know, working from home where possible and all this, because everyone has different responsibilities, and they do, you know, particularly in Sweden, they want to help you have that work-life balance, you know, where you can. And so it had been like on the boil a little bit, but there was no pressure. And now it had to happen, like literally in our case over the weekend. So now, like, when this finally, if ever, is all over, now we have that infrastructure. It's just working. So, you know, it's that's the kind of thing they're thinking. It's like, if you know, it's there for you now. If you want to work from home, it's better for you and the team to work from home. Do that. But what we want is for you to want to come in. We want to make this a place that you don't want to be away from for too long. And I think that's a really nice mindset, that they're going to just make the office a really cool place. And obviously we miss each other loads, but, you know, it's available now. Like you say, there are positives to this shit situation, where people have found out that there's some stuff that kind of works about being away from the office, and they can make it work after all. So I think might hopefully we'll find that there's like a nice balance to be struck there, where people can be productive in a really cool way. Like sometimes I have ideas in the middle of the night, I can come down and do a few hours then, and do less hours in the day. You can't be creative from 9 to 5 sometimes. You know, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I definitely sign off on that. I think different people. I'm an early bird. I've always been.
Me too.
I think part of that is being a family man. I have to, if I want real work done, I have to wake up earlier than everybody to kind of get it done. But there was a restriction to that with studios, especially it's one of those, it's appearances, right? Right. So if I'm showing up 4 hours earlier than everybody, no one sees that. They just see the guy who's leaving at 4 or 5 p.m. It's like, bro. Yeah. So there was a period in my career that I had to kind of balance that out. It's like, I get creative in the morning, but I can't show up too early. Otherwise, I'm spending 12 hours for no reason, just to show that I'm there. Yeah. So it's always weird. But now I think with this, it kind of allows people to just check my check-in, dude. Everyone's kind of doing the same. You see that I'm putting in the time. You're seeing the good work that's coming through. It's purely about work. And then the office is just irreplaceable in terms of team gatherings and just brainstorming. And I think that's the best of both options. I definitely see a lot of studios going that way.
I think that focus on the output is so much better than checking your hours.
Yeah.
Have you done your 8 hours a day? All right. Yeah, I have. What have you done? Well, not that much.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't matter in the end, then, does it? We're here to make a game. I'd rather someone came in for 3 hours and nailed it.
Yeah.
And took the rest of the day off. Is the only thing that matters in the end is the job. Or obviously you don't mess anyone else up.
Yeah. I love that. I love that it's breaking that barrier, that industrial revolution. 9 to 5
it's thing. So antiquated, isn't it?
It's very old. And as creatives, it just doesn't work. It's never worked for me. I never liked it. After 2 p.m. after lunch, I'm done. I have a big meal and I'm like mentally checked out. It's just like waiting around and just fucking around with colleagues at that point, which is valuable in itself. But that's the reality. I don't know anyone that's super efficient really after lunch. It's just people counting the clock to get out.
There's a big push in Sweden for like the 6-hour day.
The second episode I want to highlight today is with Jay Wilson. Jay Wilson is best known for his time at Blizzard as the creative director for Diablo 3. And since then, he retired and was focusing on his writing career with his first novel, currently out, actually. It was nice to talk to him because to kind of see his being absent from the industry for a little while and coming back to kind of gain his perspective on what was going on. We were able to kind of talk about the online communication challenges that the pandemic kind of gave us between devs, the adverse effect when it comes to meeting online only and not having basically colleagues and talent around in the office to discuss game design specifically. And if the opening of global talent with basically remote working becoming a thing, being a threat to people who are just living in the United States for US jobs. We covered like a variety of different topics, and it's a great episode that you guys should definitely revisit and listen fully. But here's an excerpt for those who are curious. This is again episode 254. How has the industry changed with Jay Wilson? Check it out.
I'm going to be a little on the mean side there and say, welcome to the world of people who don't work well in offices. They've lived in your world all their lives. And, if they could live through that and suck it up and try it out, you can do the same thing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people being exposed right now in this new time. This actually leads into my next line of questioning. So, what happens now, right? So this is the year that I anticipate that at least near the end, we're going to start seeing game developers slowly crawling back into the workforce, into an office, right? Just maybe slivers of it, maybe at the end of the year with the vaccines coming out. I mean, I don't know if you're still in Orange County. I mean, the numbers are pretty crazy right now.
I actually live in Portland, Oregon now.
Even better. So the numbers are spiking, but I think everyone is kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, at least where seems to be an ending somewhat, right? I would love to kind of hear what you think is going to happen now with part of it is what you said might be a hybrid approach. And part of it is how I guess pro tips that you think where we are changing, we are going to be working in a new environment, how game devs and teams can be effective in this new type of industry. Same game industry, but a new type of office environment, right? And I completely agree with you. The visibility thinking, it's huge. In the office, it's weird, but you have to overly say hi to people to make them realize that you actually are there doing work. Otherwise, it's very easy to sit in your cubicle and disappear. And I think a lot of game developers make that mistake. It's like, oh, it's all about the work, right? As long as my work shows, then I'm good. It's not that, right? So, and then you add this extra element with online connectivity and remote working. And now we're going to see kind of what is the best of both worlds there for a developer or a team to really navigate through this in a successful way.
Well, I think you're going to see more of a hybrid approach. I think you're going to see a lot more game developers who are okay with people working from home as part of their time working. The benefits are very high. If for no other, I used to spend, when I worked at Blizzard, I didn't work that far from Blizzard, and I still lost an hour to an hour and a half every day commuting. And so that's a lot of lost time. But I still think that the benefits of and the natural desire that management has towards a single development location is strong. And I think as the pandemic goes away, as we've seen in locations where there are parts of the world where the pandemic is either under control or even completely contained. And if you talk to people from those parts of the world, they're like, everything's like it was before. I think we thrive on normalcy, and we'll move back towards it as quickly as we can. But I do think we'll be more open towards people working from home. We've already seen some of the big developers, not always in game development, but in technology in general, say, yeah, we're okay with it. I think Google has said, yeah, you can work from home for the foreseeable future, even after the pandemic. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think we're going to see good managers looking at their people and realizing how they're most productive and putting them in those situations, whether that be work from home, work in the office, or a hybrid. I also think you're going to see a lot more remote studios. So that is going to be a thing. I think it's going to work better with small teams. Just naturally, small teams, communication is less of an issue in general. And as a result, I think remote lends itself to a small team better than it will to. So by small, I mean under 45. I know that's a really specific number, but it's been my experience that there are breakpoints in team size. And 45 is one of those breakpoints. I don't know why it's not 50, but it feels like over 45 is right around where you get this new, you need another layer of management. You need better to up your communication. And I think probably bigger than that, you're going to find challenges working remote. Not to say it can't work. It's just going to be harder. And so I think you're going to see a lot of smaller studios that are more successful for no other reason than it's very difficult to get people to move for a small studio. But if you work remote, you can hire from anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm. And actually, speaking of from anywhere in the world, although the remote working is great, and I really do think the people with professionalism and awesome work are should be never feeling insecure about their job. But overall, we are opening up a barrier of entry where overseas, now that everybody can connect remotely, unless a studio really has strict rules about time zones. There's a new level of talent that can be invited within a studio setting for any of the disciplines now, and at a fraction of the salary even, right? So from that perspective, I would love to kind of hear your thoughts about how real is that scenario where it used to be, we work with people with visas before and they're super talented and stuff. But now you don't need that. And because of the visa thing, it prevented a lot of talent from getting into these great companies, working on these great projects, right? Good and bad, right? Mostly bad. Yeah.
There still are legal issues with you can't just hire and have someone from another country work for you without working out. I don't know the exact details of that, but it's not as simple, I think, as you no longer need a visa. But that being said, like there are a lot of scenarios where, and already companies where they do that, where they actually have groups that are or individuals that are working on the other side of the world. And from what I've understood, there are a lot of benefits in, you think of it like, oh, well, that's a downside because one group is working at a different time than another group. And so their ability to communicate is not as good because of the difference there. Like one person sleeping when another group is awake. But actually, from what I've heard, the group, when one group sunsets, the other group starts and can address issues for the group that is off. And so you get this interesting back and forth that I from what I understand, can work quite well. But yeah, I think that I think the idea that if you have a remote company, you can hire from a much broader talent set and from a much broader geographical, I don't know the words I was going to say words there, and I don't know the words I was going to say, but from anywhere in the world, basically, that idea, well, yeah, that's why you do remote, because you can hire from anywhere in the world. And I don't, when I say like, oh, you can hire from anywhere, I really do mean, I'm not just talking about anywhere in the US or anywhere in North America. I do really think like, oh yeah, you hire from anywhere, because from every company I've ever worked for, we've always hired from all over the world. I've never worked in a studio where we didn't have people from Europe, people from Australia, people from Asia who we pulled into the company. I can't imagine that it would be more difficult remote. It seems like it would be easier. If for no other reason, you don't have to talk somebody into leaving their life behind.
This third episode that I want to highlight about how the pandemic kind of was changing the industry is with Raid Prokopovich. So he's from SOZAP, and our focus for that episode was about the mobile market. So the mobile market has always been industry changing, industry leading for all thing game related. And it was great to have him on to kind of discuss what the pandemic was kind of altering and changing. As you can probably guess, there was an increase of players for the mobile market as everyone's kind of spending more time at home. But we were able to discuss his general outlook on the industry and the new challenges that came from the pandemic itself. So this episode is surely a great listen for those who are curious to listen to the full thing. It is episode 278, SOZAP in the mobile market after the pandemic with Raid Prokopovich. Enjoy. There is kind of like a coldness when it becomes virtual only, where it really is becoming the focus of it's just about work, right? And
yeah,
it's different.
It is different. I mean, as a CEO of a company like Sozap now, we're 30 men and women strong now. We have half the people in Serbia, in the Serbian office, right? And I speak to them more or less daily, right? But it's when I actually go down and I'm increasing that, because of the COVID situation, I've not been able to do that for this past time. But now I'm slowly increasing my physical visits to Serbia, because I don't know. I mean, when you talk about something or somebody has an idea, if or does something, if it does something good or does something, let's say, not so good, if you are there, I mean, the physical presence or the physical contact, even if like, hey, great job, and I, tap you on the shoulder naturally, or, just human interaction, I believe it feeds us with energy. It feeds us with energy to perform better, or to go over those hurdles together. Like if there's 20 people in the office and we have an issue, it's 20 people in the office, assisting each other getting over that hurdle, whatever it may be, right? But if everybody's working remotely, for me, it's a sad vision. People remotely in front of their screens trying to produce a product, create a product. I don't see that. I would be terrified if that would be our future.
Yeah, I think I'm still on the fence with things, because I can see both ways, right? A lot of companies right now, we see it with Apple, we see it with Google, we see a lot of these companies kind of backstepping, like remote forever, right? And at the same time, they're like, we'll see you back in the office September, and special case only if you want to. And there's like a huge resistance with a lot of employees saying that they'd rather quit and do something else. So we're seeing like this kind of like struggle of what's correct and what's not, and I think the truth is always in between. Last year we dedicated a few episodes towards like, is remote working all it is, what was supposed to be, right? But the finding was pretty clear. Like a lot of companies were struggling with it. It wasn't all roses, right? There was a lot of challenges. The connection, like you mentioned, it was a key factor of it not working. And I think overall, people, game developers like to think of themselves as completely self-sufficient and always get the work done. But I think the large percentage of us are pretty lazy. And that accountability, I only think certain individuals can really do that. And it's from practice of freelancing or doing side work or side hustling, or started their own business before so they can self-manage. I don't think a lot of people have that skill set to completely do it full time at home just yet. It takes time, right? And the pandemic did not help. Yeah.
No, I mean, if you look at the game, if somebody can do it, game developers can. My colleagues, all the people at Sozap, I mean, they're here because they love what they do, right? So I would say that for many of them, it works. In shifts, it might even be good. Let's say working at home 1 week of 4 or 1 week of 6, or when you have your tasks, and when we know what we have to do, let's say a coming period, then I see it as refreshing. But I do believe that, I mean, companies like Google or Apple, they're so big that I can't even imagine how they keep their culture, or how they keep these things alive. Most likely they have a whole department just dedicated for this. But at Sozap, and for me especially, I, as a CEO, wouldn't want to run a company, even if it's, I don't know, profitable. I don't want to run it without the human interaction. But that's basically my stance. I mean, I don't want to run a company, even if everybody performs, even if, everybody does their tasks and the results and everything is there. Personally, I wouldn't enjoy being CEO of such a company. Human interaction,
right?
Especially today and in the future, I think it's something to strive for. But again, we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, Sweden, I know a lot of companies have struggled with keeping the performance up when people are away, as you said. Not all of us, and many of us are not able to self-manage. But I don't see this lasting more than the pandemic, if you ask me. As soon as the pandemic is under control fully, I think 90% of the companies or more will go back to how it was prior.
I agree. I think I'm already seeing that with a lot of the tech companies. They're reversing their stance. I like to see. I like to think it's the truth is always in the middle, right? Obviously, you have one where the employees like to stay at home, and then the other side, you got like yourself, right? Who see the benefit of being in the office, and I've seen both arguments being pretty much correct, because yeah, I mean some companies can say, yeah, we were super efficient, this and that, but even then, collaboration is so key in a lot of these creative ventures that I don't see a replacement for that just yet. And like you said, it would probably be a hybrid approach. With SOZAP, going back to that, right? You kind of like started this company from just surveying where the industry was heading, and I mean, it came all true in huge folds with shooters, especially the last few years being huge on mobile, and continuing to be that way, and especially with younger generation, it seems like the phone is probably their first console, and most likely they're going to stick to that as their only console. Even then, I don't think it's the demise of consoles per se. You know, the PS5, the Xbox, all sold out still, even when economically the world was supposed to see in a disaster, but it's still sold out. People were still being able to afford those machines. So if anything, it looks like the industry had this tremendous growth over the pandemic. People who got introduced to games early on are discovering, you know, more hardcore games, or games that are more time intensive, I would say. So the growth of it and everything is, I would like to ask, is it the expectation that you saw before? Like, where is it heading from here on out for the next 5 years, you feel, with the onslaught of VR becoming more popular? You know, Apple's, it's rumor AR features are coming out too. Like, a lot of these things are happening.
To add some more history, I mean, when I got the idea to start SOZAP, and when we got the first team, I mean, it was only 10. I mean, if you count the outsourcing that was done with our guys, it was 10 men on that game. So we had this great, we saw the future. We were right about the future. We had this great game idea. We had everything except the resources. I mean, 10 guys made that game. So what I've learned from that is, first of all, you need to have the studio, right? And SOZAP as a studio is now starting to let's say, get one man on each part of the deck, if we say so. So that's the first thing. And most of us know each other, and we've done Armed Heist. So we're warmed up. When I look at the future, I do see two things. I do believe I see two things. One being that software is getting more and more, how to say, the toolbox is more and more complete. I mean, you saw that on Real MetaHuman.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I do see that what needed 200 people, a project that needed 200 people 2 years ago, 3 years ago, right? I do believe it's going to need less and less people as we go forward. I mean, I believe Unreal and Unity, they're buying up different services. And I do believe that, you know, in 5 years from now, most likely it will be easier for smaller studios to engage in these larger titles, let's say Battle Royale, 100 people networking, creating characters, creating those terrains and assets, all of that. So I do see a future where smaller studios, if they are creative enough, can compete for the top experience for the users. At the same time, I do believe that the future will be people will not have a PlayStation or an Xbox or a PC. People will have their input device, like a control. For example, the PS5 controls now are awesome with all this haptical feedback and stuff. So I do see that in the future, you're going to buy your input device, your handheld control, and that's going to be what you have. And then when you play, you play on any screen via your control, the control you like, the control you chose. That's what I see. So I see a cross-platform, cross-device future. That is what I see, along with, as I said, Unreal and Unity, all the other engines getting more and more pre-stuffed with functionality and tools, which makes for an exciting future. I mean, what if a 50-man studio could make GTA 5 experiences, let's say, in 5 to 10 years from now?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely correct, man. Like, the tools are enabling smaller teams to repeat what larger teams used to do like 5 years ago, right? So that is certainly the trend where the tools are just getting rid of the boring labor that most game developers never wanted to do beforehand, right? So it gives it opens the it's either outsourced or it's being fixed with these tools, and just allowing us to be creatives again. And like you said, the Fortnite was a big thing for industry in many ways, but the most important thing it did was it forced crossplay, and I think between that and Warzone, like the shooters, of course, leading the way again on a lot of these innovations, that was huge. For the longest time, when at least when we were growing up, Xbox playing against PlayStation players was never a thing. They're competing products, and they're allowing their player base to play with each other on a single game, and now it's becoming so standard now it becomes weird. It's like, why can't I play with everyone that plays this game? So that was a huge step towards a future that you're kind of talking about, where input devices are kind of like your choice, but the content is just free for everyone. Not free, but like just for anyone to play who wants to play.
It's accessible. I mean, I don't know, again, I'm not a developer, and I'm for sure not as technically, I don't have that understanding that my colleague and CTO and founding partner Christopher Blumen has. But I like that I don't have that, because that makes me think a bit naive and outside of the box, if you understand how I mean. I mean, I would love for our next shooter to be accessible through a browser.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
You go, let's play a session, right? And you enter the computer, you open a browser. I would love for our next shooter to be, as you say, cross-platform and the same experience on all devices. I think the only obstacle but it's going to be solved. It is the input devices. Like, if I have this carbon fiber handheld control that feels what I'm thinking. So if I think it shoots, right? If I have that control and you're on a mobile, for sure it's going to be an unfair advantage that I have, right? But all of these things, I mean, if you look at some of the mobile games today that are free to play, they have this, how to say, capped experience. I like to play some games, and then and most of the free to play games are pay to win in some way, but many of them have these tournaments or events where people's equipment and what they have inside the game is capped to a certain level, right? To level the playing field. And for sure, I mean, you're going to see most likely the same type of solutions coming up for somebody on mobile, playing somebody on a PC or what that may be. But the most important thing I would like to say is like people like to be entertained. Digital entertainment and in the video games, I do see them, HBO, Netflix, Prime, all of these things that you stream TV series or movies. I mean, games are going to go the same way.
Last but not least, you can't talk about the game industry and how the pandemic can affect it without talking about VR. So VR has always been a topic that I am personally interested year after year, and it's kind of great to kind of see how it progressed and grew from where we're standing here. So I was able to kind of bring on a VR expert who worked on the HoloLens project and many other VR sets and projects, Scott Rogers. We were able to cover a lot of topics like online education, the social networking aspect, and how it helps VR. Went back in the history of the Nintendo Virtual Boy to what it is now with the Oculus 2 and the other VR aspects that are non-gaming specific, especially in a world that everyone's remote but still want to be connected, what virtual office could look like. So we went through all the ranges of things that I am curious about, and hopefully you listeners were curious about how VR kind of plays into this overarching story of how we connect to each other as developers, but as players. Check out the full episode 260, What's Next for VR with Scott Rogers. Yeah, I think there's so much of a learning curve that we're adjusting to. I think even before, especially with the younger generation, they were okay with the social networking taking over the life, and then we're fastly realizing that is not enough, and it's actually detrimental to us socializing.
Right.
Who would have thought, right? But that actually brings up to the main meat of this topic that I wanted to talk to you about. So I came across some very great insights that you had about VR. And VR, if anything, I believe have gotten a recent boost for a few things. I think because of Facebook taking over Oculus treating their devices like phones. So we're seeing iterations a lot faster, a lot more evolution of that device and more acceptance. And now it's crazy to see how quick of a turnaround now that the Quest 2 doesn't require any wires, any camera setup. That's a huge plus, and it seems to be one step closer for general consumption, right?
Right. And well, I would also add to that the interesting thing about virtual reality is people often forget that it doesn't just mean a device with the goggles. Like we are right now, Brandon, you and I are experiencing virtual reality, and particularly, that you have me on your virtual television set and you are sitting in your virtual, secret lair somewhere. And so virtual reality takes many forms. It's not just, the traditional where the goggles play a first person shooter, but in this, kind of stereoscopic vision perspective like the old days. I mean, virtual reality, the concept has been around for a very long time. The application of it has even been around for a long time. And this is something that in my history class, part of the goal of the history class is to just let people know that things come around again and again. History repeats itself, and video games are no different. Trends in video games and ideas and even applications of play get reused over and over again. And so one of the weeks we spend is a really hard look at the history of virtual reality and the fact that it really started commercially, it started in the 80s. There had been experiments all the way going back to the early 60s in it. But then it went through, just like the traditional video game industry, it had a kind of a boom and a bust. And by 1992 or 93, it was kind of gone. It was passé, partially because the technology just wasn't there yet. And, the graphic resolution and the frame rate and, all the things that contributed towards a good experience hadn't really been perfected. Now, people fortunately did do that and they spent the time, but I think the things that VR are now benefiting from are a lot of things that came from the video game industry. I think that, for example, or the film industry. So this, green screening, for example, to allow you to make these fun backgrounds and digital imagery, creating a digital set. That's movies and that's video games, right? So VR is now having this resurgence, this evolution, because those other industries were moving forward where maybe VR was kind of standing still for a while. But I think now we're in a better place, and the experiences can be much more convincing and much less painful on the user. I think that there's still several obstacles, though, in its way from it being to the point where I think it can be.
Yeah, I think for in a little while we'll kind of deep dive into what those blockers are to kind of make it what's blocking us from the matrix. Basically, I do want to sign off. Like, I was a huge fan of the Virtual Boy. I never owned one, but they used to have these kind of setups at these malls, and anytime that we would go back to the mall, I would immediately go back, and I think I was playing the Mario on those Virtual Boys, and at that point it was very, all red graphics. So it's a terrible device. I'm honestly surprised that you liked it. I liked it because it was different. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I remember going to an E3 in Los Angeles before it came out, and I waited in line for like an hour to use the Virtual Boy because I was, I like Nintendo and I always respected their hardware and their inventions, and later on, I found out the guy who invented it was the same guy who did the Game Boy, and his name is Gunpei Yokai, and he's amazing. Unfortunately he's passed, but he was. I don't think Nintendo would have existed without a guy like him, and Miyamoto. I think are the two rock stars. Miyamoto gets all the credit, but Gunpei Yokai is like he's the true wizard. He did the light gun. He did the Game Boy. He was the producer for Donkey Kong. He's got, his credits are amazing. Yeah. But anyway, so Virtual Boy was like his baby, but I also heard that years later, the reason why it was all red was to keep the cost down. It was too expensive to do the, blue and green that you need to make full color. So they were trying to keep it from being, $1,000. So I think it was still around $300-$400, right? Was the MSRP?
Sounds about right, yeah.
So anyway, I waited in line for this thing, and I get to it, and it's literally this. It looks like a ViewMaster on a tripod, and a really flimsy tripod. Like, people kept knocking it over. It was like you had to the way they had it set up. You had to crouch down and put your head into it. It was very uncomfortable, and it was heavy. So, and there was no head strap or anything like that. So you couldn't lock into it, right? And it just. I walked away being profoundly disappointed by the Virtual Boy because I saw that the idea was good. The idea of this headset where the game fully encompasses your field of vision and you've got the speakers on, so you're uninterrupted, you're immersed in the world. But the experience, and there's a video that I show or used to show by a YouTuber named the Angry Video Game Nerd or something like that. And he's got actually a really good segment on the Virtual Boy. And he's foul-mouthed and he's kind of a crude personality, but he shows every game on the Game Boy and rants about it and how terrible it is and all that. It's a pretty funny video, worth watching. But it really does highlight the things that were poor about that system. And it's too bad, mainly because I don't think Nintendo will ever try to make something like that again, because that system tanked so badly. I think that they are probably haunted by the specter of the Virtual Boy, and if they had their druthers, they would probably destroy every copy that was in existence.
I think Nintendo kept the spirit, at least, of their innovation. I think out of all the console makers, they've been always the one taking the risk
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah. I mean, the Wii and all that is, of course, the
Switch
kind
now
of this,
too. It's killing it.
Yeah, the Switch, right? Yeah, it's the spiritual successors to Game Boy really is the thing that's amazing about Gunpei Yokai's legacy is if you look at the form factor of the Game & Watch, which is another thing he invented. That form factor has been the basis for every piece of Nintendo hardware, with the exception of there was one system that wasn't quite, I think it might have been the GameCube or something like that. But like every other piece of technology and hardware that Nintendo has made, really you can see a very clear line between the evolution of the Game & Watch to the two-screen Game & Watch, which really looks like a DS.
Yeah.
If you look at, right, if you know that two-screen Donkey Kong system, and it just, the form factor just worked, and it supported Nintendo literally for like 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm. So, so I think Oculus kind of had the same effect, I think, but finally realizing the capabilities of today's technology to kind of make it, less like a toy, but more realistic. I think it was just hampered outside of the core players by the wires, by the setup. Like I owned the original, well, not the original, but the Oculus 2, right? Basically with the wires and camera setup. Yeah. And even though I was excited and I saw the huge potential and had a lot of fun, the setup killed me every time because I don't have a dedicated VR room. I would have to spend 10 minutes to set it up. And that kind of hampered the replayability of the device for me. But then, of course, the Rift S came out and immediately that helped, which is like the dedicated PC version of the Quest. And that helped a lot. But still, there is like a resistance to kind of like put it on, fire it up, and like kind of take your whole living room apart by playing Half-Life Alyx, right? Half-Life Alyx was, I think, was a huge turning point for me to kind of finally the beginning of VR happens.
It was Alyx was kind of the, they call it the killer app, right? It's the game that everybody wanted to play, that everybody was excited about. They're like, oh, I want to play the new Half-Life because I love Half-Life 1 and I love Half-Life 2 and all the episodes in that. And so, Alyx technically is Half-Life 3, right? I mean, it's not, but it is. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, and I think there were a few other games on other systems as well. Like I think a few of the PlayStation games really got some attention, like the Resident Evil one and the Rocksteady Batman game. Mm-hmm. And then on the Vive, you have things like you have kind of lighter fare on the Vive, things like Space Pirate Simulator or Beat Saber or the Rick and then the kind of they're kind of the errors of the adventure game, the click and point stuff like the Rick and Morty game, the virtual reality, and I forget. There's a few others that remind me of that type of gameplay. But I think that I first of all, I 100% agree with you, Brandon, about the tearing apart the living room and having to set up these towers and then we have to make sure there's enough room past those towers so you don't run into a wall or through a window or into your couch. And so remember earlier I was saying there's some barriers to entry still to VR, and I think this is a big one. I in my mind, I'm not quite sure unless VR really gets embraced for other applications than gaming, which there have been several attempts and people make lots of different products. But until I think the general user thinks of it as something other than a gaming machine or a gaming, the you play games on it, I think that it's still going to be very niche. And I'm a VR. I love VR. I love playing VR. I worked in VR for about a year, and when I was at Disney, we did some stuff as well. But I don't see it replacing the home console right now, because the home console is it takes up less space. It's much easier to just kind of sit on your couch and do things. I mean, we had a moment in console gaming where motion controls were big, right? The Wii and the Kinect and the Move And those were fantastic systems, and they evolved very quickly. And there's some really cool games for them, particularly I think on the Wii. They still hold up to this day. Mm-hmm. But where is motion control now? Right? Like motion control has kind of been abandoned by the console makers, and I think there's a reason because of that. And I think it's the commitment to the space that you need, and the user. Many users, myself included, just don't have the space to adequately use something like that. And so, it's part of it is just the fact that many people don't live in a big enough place, they live in apartments, or they live in a small residential rather than a house with a big room in it or something like that. So I think that, this ties into a whole other, things about, economics and cultures and things like that. But I think that is we don't have the holodeck in our house. Like houses don't come with that room that says, all right, here's your bedroom. You're going to buy a 3-bedroom house with, 2 bathrooms and a hologram room, or a VR room, right? Mm-hmm. There's not, it just doesn't exist. And until it becomes part of the, until things like that are common and people expect that in just the structure of their house, right? Like kind of like a family room. I don't know. Do you have a living room and a family room in your house, Brandon?
Yeah, but I know that's rare.
It is rare. I've rented houses that have that, but I haven't lived in a house with a living room and a family room in like 10, 12 years. Right. Yeah. And I know, and I'm like, I'm considered at an economic level where, I'm doing better than many. Most, right. Yeah. But that said, I don't live in, any house that would support that. And therefore I don't have that space. Now, the other half of the equation is VR is expensive. Right now even though it's way more cost effective than it used to be, and it's ever been, but it's still considered a luxury item. And I think, again, the consoles are the main way that people, that and PCs are the main ways that people play games. And therefore, they're like, what? Do I really want to spend all extra money to just do this other type of game? And I think that there's reluctance from the market because of that.
Again, I want to thank you for you guys being patient, for longtime listeners, waiting around for me to come back. I'm feeling stronger than ever, and finally getting help to kind of produce this every week for you guys. So there are a lot of things this year that I'm looking forward to explore more. The world of M&T, the never-ending acquisitions day after day. We're hearing new ones, and it's only January and early February. And most importantly, there's this whole topic when it comes to the great exit, where not just our industry, but other industries are reevaluating their lives and how they want to see their work-life balance be more balanced, basically. And a lot of people are quitting. Or even double dipping or triple dipping, right? People are having 2-3 salary jobs without telling their employers. This is all happening. This is all changing the landscape. And it's a new challenge that I want to explore with all future guests, so that you guys can tune in and listen on what's going on the changing landscape right beneath us. So keep tuning in this week for a recap of what last year looks like as we kind of lead up to this year's range of topics. Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you are liking the podcast, go to the Apple iTunes store and give Game Dev Unchained a 5-star rating. This will help spread the joy and love and exposure for the podcast, and we thank you very much. If you want to continue the conversation, go to our Discord, which can be found on our website, www.gamedevunchained.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at BlueChamps, BlueChamps. You want to catch these episodes live every Tuesdays and Thursdays, go to twitch.tv/blue_champs. Email me any of your concerns or questions that you want me to read aloud at the beginning of each episode at info@gamedevunchained.com. And if you want to further support us and help unlock the next feature, which is the voicemail feature, go to patreon.com/bluechamps. This gives listeners a chance to kind of call in, leave a message for both me and the guests to answer your deepest, darkest questions and comment on your deepest, darkest secrets. Thank you, everybody.